What if I told you that one of the most legendary nameplates in American muscle car history was quietly killed, not with a bang, but with a whisper? And the car that carried its final breath was so controversial, so misunderstood, that even die-hard GTO fans refused to talk about it. This is the story of the 1975 Pontiac Ventura GTO. And once you hear the full story, you'll never look at a badge the same way again. The GTO. 3 letters that once made Detroit tremble and teenagers dream. But by 1975, something had gone terribly wrong. The muscle car era was dying, America was in an energy crisis, and Pontiac made a decision that would haunt the brand for decades. Today, we're going deep into the car that ended an era. The specs, the scandal, the cultural earthquake, and why this forgotten machine is quietly becoming one of the most interesting collector cars of the 1970s. Stick with me, because the real story is far more complicated and far more fascinating than you think. To understand why the 1975 GTO matters, you have to go back to where it all began, 1964. John DeLorean, then chief engineer at Pontiac, essentially smuggled a performance package past GM's corporate rules and bolted a 389 cubic inch V8 into a mid-size Tempest. They called it the GTO, borrowed from Ferrari's racing car nomenclature. And American muscle was never the same again. By the late 1960s, the GTO was a cultural phenomenon. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement. It was on the radio. Ronnie and the Daytonas sang about it. It was on the streets of every American city, rumbling at stoplights, terrifying insurance agents, and making young men feel invincible. The 1969 GTO Judge, with its Ram Air 4 engine pushing 370 horsepower, was the pinnacle. Pure, unapologetic American muscle. But the clock was ticking. 1973 changed everything. The Arab oil embargo hit American consumers like a freight train. Gas lines stretched around city blocks. The price at the pump doubled overnight. Suddenly, a car that got 10 miles to the gallon wasn't cool, it was a liability. At the same time, Washington was moving fast. New emissions regulations from the EPA were strangling high-compression engines. Insurance companies, already terrified of the muscle car generation's accident rates, were charging premiums so high that owning a performance car in your 20s was nearly impossible. And then came the new federal safety standards. Bumpers, catalytic converters, unleaded fuel requirements, all of which chipped away at raw horsepower like a slow erosion. Between 1970 and 1974, the GTO's horsepower dropped from 370 down to 200. Think about that. The same nameplate, half the power. The muscle car wars weren't just ending, they were being legislated out of existence. Pontiac was caught in an impossible position, and their solution? It would go down as one of the most controversial badge decisions in American automotive history. In 1974, Pontiac made a desperate move. Sales of the GTO had been cratering. The full-size GTO was expensive to produce, expensive to insure, and increasingly hard to sell. So the brass at GM's Pontiac division made a call. They would rebadge the compact Ventura, their economy-focused small car, as the new GTO. Let that sink in. The GTO, the car that defined American muscle, was now a compact economy car with a performance sticker slapped on it. The 1974 GTO rode on the Ventura platform, essentially a version of the Chevy Nova. It was smaller, lighter, and came standard with a 350 cubic inch V8 producing around 200 horsepower. For 1974, it wasn't a terrible car on its own merits, but it wasn't a GTO. Not in spirit, not in soul, and the public knew it. By 1975, Pontiac doubled down, and the result was the car we're here to talk about today. The 1975 Pontiac Ventura GTO was, in pure specification terms, a modest machine. Under the hood sat a 2-barrel 350 cubic inch V8, producing approximately 155 net horsepower. Remember, by this point, the industry had shifted to SAE net ratings, which made every number look smaller. A 4-barrel version bumped that to around 175 horsepower.
The car weighed in at roughly 3,500 pounds, featured front disc brakes, which was actually a solid safety upgrade for the era, and came with a 3-speed manual or optional automatic transmission. Exterior-wise, you got the classic GTO twin-scoop hood, sport mirrors, GTO badging, and a blacked-out grille that tried hard to evoke the aggressive look of its predecessors. Inside, the Ventura GTO offered bucket seats, a sporty instrument cluster, and a rally gauge package that gave it at least the feel of a performance machine. For $3,800 to $4,200, depending on options, it wasn't outrageously priced for the era. But here's the critical problem. Pontiac was asking buyers to pay a premium for a name that the car couldn't live up to dynamically. Quarter-mile times hovered around 17 seconds. The original 1969 Judge ran the quarter in the mid-13s. You do the math. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Car and Driver called it a disappointment. Road Test magazine was polite but damning. But the harshest critics weren't the journalists, they were the fans. The GTO faithful, the guys who had lined up at dealerships in 1966, who had drag raced on Friday nights in 1968, who had pinned GTO posters to their bedroom walls, felt genuinely betrayed. This wasn't evolution, it felt like desecration. Sales reflected the sentiment. Pontiac had moved over 7,000 GTO units in 1974. By 1975, that number collapsed to just around 2,300 units total for the entire model year across the entire United States. To put that in perspective, Pontiac was selling more Sunbirds than GTOs. The writing was on the wall in enormous, flashing letters. Culturally, the 1975 GTO arrived at the worst possible moment. America was processing Watergate, the fall of Saigon, and a recession. The optimism of the muscle car era, that wide-open, high-octane confidence, had evaporated. The country wanted fuel economy and reliability. The GTO, even in its diluted form, represented a world that no longer existed. Pontiac pulled the plug after 1975. No farewell tour, no special edition, no send-off. The GTO nameplate simply disappeared from the order books, and most people barely noticed. What killed it wasn't any single factor. It was everything at once. Federal regulations had neutered the engine. Insurance costs had priced out the core demographic. The oil crisis had shifted consumer priorities entirely. And GM's own internal politics, with divisions competing for the same shrinking performance market, left Pontiac without the resources or the corporate will to save it. The GTO would stay dead for nearly 3 decades, until 2004, when Pontiac tried again with an Australian-built rear-wheel drive coupe, but that's a story for another day. Here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Today, the 1975 Pontiac Ventura GTO, the car that fans tried to forget, is becoming genuinely interesting to serious collectors. And the reason is simple: scarcity. Only about 2,300 were built. Of those, a fraction survive in any presentable condition. Well-documented, numbers-matching examples are extraordinarily rare. Auction houses have seen clean 1975 GTOs move in the $18,000 to $35,000 range, depending on condition and provenance. Not headline numbers, but climbing steadily as the supply shrinks and the boomer generation hunts for affordable muscle car nostalgia. The 4-barrel cars, especially those with the optional rally gauges and 4-speed manual conversion, are the most sought after. And here's the thing that surprises most people. These cars are actually fun to drive. Light, reasonably balanced, with a rev-happy small block that responds well to modern upgrades. They're not quarter-mile kings, but they're honest, characterful machines. And now for the part that almost nobody knows. When Pontiac executives were internally debating the future of the GTO in late 1974, there was a proposal on the table, a genuine, purpose-built successor that would have used a new platform, a turbocharged engine concept, and retained the GTO's heritage authentically. The project was greenlit for preliminary development before GM's corporate hierarchy killed it, citing costs and the uncertainty of the emissions landscape. Had that car reached production, automotive history might read very differently. Instead, Pontiac got the Firebird as its performance flagship, which itself became a legend, and the GTO was left to die quietly in a compact car's body. So, the 1975 Pontiac Ventura GTO wasn't just a bad decision. It was the visible symptom of an industry in crisis, a culture in transition, and a company that ran out of options at the worst possible moment in American history. The 1975 Pontiac Ventura GTO deserves to be remembered. Not mocked, not forgotten. It was a flawed car in a desperate era, carrying an impossible legacy on its modest shoulders. And somehow, 50 years later, it's become a genuine piece of American automotive history. The last GTO of its generation. The car that closed a chapter. If you had the chance to own one today, knowing everything you now know, would you? Or does the badge still carry too much baggage? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the cars that history forgot, subscribe right now, because we're just getting started.